Hi everyone, and welcome to our session this evening on the Christmas Island and the Cocos Keeling Islands, a remote part of Australia that I certainly don't know a lot about, but I'm looking forward to learning from our three special guests we've got tonight. So just a bit of housekeeping. The microphones for our watchers are muted so that we can't be disturbed, but what we do ask you is to put your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we will endeavour to answer your questions as we go throughout the evening. We've had some pre-arranged questions, which is fantastic, so thank you for the people that sent those questions in earlier for us. My name is Caroline, and I've got over 20 years experience of selling Australia to the rest of the world, and currently under COVID to a lot of Australians, which is pretty exciting as they're getting out there to get to know their own country. With us this evening, we have three special guests and Simon from Wild Diaries. So I'll start with our guests. So we have Lisa Preston, and she has a company called Indian Ocean Experiences. So Lisa puts together holidays and packages for the Christmas and Cocos Islands. So Lisa's in the middle there. Then we have Jana Luke, and Jana is involved with the Christmas Island marketing and is also well across the Cocos Island, Keeling Islands as well. And we also have Richard Baxter sitting with the ladies, and Richard is a bird guide and obviously knows a lot about wildlife in the region as well. So we might start by just getting everyone to quickly give a brief intro to themselves, a little more than what I've done, and what their role and what they do around in the region. So Jana, do we want to start with you?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. So my name's Jana Luke. I'm the marketing manager at Christmas Island Tourism. I've lived here on the island for 8 years now with my husband and my children. And also I absolutely love Christmas Island. I love diving, all the water opportunities here, caving, the jungle hikes. It's really amazing. And Cocos as well. I've just been over there for a couple of weeks, and that's also absolutely beautiful.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. Lisa?
Hi, thanks everybody. I'm Lisa from Indian Ocean Experiences. I've been living on the island for over 23 years. Just love the nature and the opportunities to have those sort of magic experiences here with our animals. Obviously everyone knows about the red crab migration, and I also run touring. So when customers are just coming up for a general look around, I've got a little selection of half-day tours and a little town tour as well to give them an orientation about some of the history and culture.
Okay, fantastic. And Richard, how did you end up in this region?
Well, I've been bringing birdwatching tours here since 2004, 2005, and my tours are usually between November and March each year. So we concentrate on the vagrant birds that overshoot from Asia, in addition to the local endemics here on Christmas and Cocos. Okay.
Now, the islands are very remote. So, Lisa, could you just explain a bit about how the mainlanders would get across to the islands and how regularly flights are for people, please?
Okay, so there's a loop service that operates out of Perth, Western Australia, with Virgin Australia. We understand that Virgin is in administration at the moment, but a subsidiary operates this service, Virgin Australia Regional Airlines, and to ensure service to the communities on the islands, the government heavily underwrites these flights. So we've been lucky throughout COVID-19 that we haven't lost any of our air services, so we're ready and raring to go with bookings and capacity. We don't have to wait for flights to come back online, so that's been a real plus. So on a Tuesday, the flight leaves Perth and comes up to Christmas Island direct. It then travels across to Cocos and down to Perth. And on the Friday, it does the reverse. So it goes up to Cocos, across to Christmas and down to Perth. So the bulk of my bookings are generally 14-night bookings, so 7 on both islands. That really gives you the opportunity to get the chance to see everything and do everything while you're in the region. And obviously, if you're spending the money to come this far, it's not that much more really to add on the alternate island. And because the islands are so different in what they offer, it's not like, well, I've been to one, I don't have to do the other. It's the whole lifestyle. Cocos quite water-based type activities. Christmas Island's very land-based and also water-based activities. So yeah, there's plenty to keep people interested, even if it might not be the primary attractor. There's plenty in the alternate island to keep people happy.
Okay. So, Jana, what's the population of Christmas Island and how sort of big is the island?
I think it's around 1,200 people at the moment. 60...
That's 135
square kilometres, yeah, and about, I think, 80 kilometres of coastline. But the settled area is a very, very small part of the island, and 2/3 of the island is actually national park. So once you leave the settled area, you're generally in the park, and there's no real infrastructure out there. It's a real nature experience out in the jungle. It's, yeah, incredible.
And what style of accommodation do people have the opportunity to stay in when they're on Christmas Island?
We do have a little bit of everything. So we don't have any of the big chain hotels. They're all sort of small family owned and operated accommodations. We've got a couple of hotels that are around 12 rooms each, but a lot of sort of freestanding, self-contained accommodations. And then we also have a luxury eco lodge out in the national park, Swell Lodge. So that consists of 2 glamping style tents right on the very edge of the cliff looking out over the Indian Ocean. So that's, I guess, a high-end experience. But as far as accommodation goes, there really is something for everyone and for all budgets as well.
I did look at the Swell Island, the Swell Resort ones, and they did look quite spectacular where they're positioned there.
They certainly are.
Yeah, so amazing. Okay, let's go back to Lisa quickly. I'll ask you about the Cocos Keeling Islands, because it's actually a group of islands as opposed to just the one island like Christmas Island. So how does it sort of, when I read about it, it sort of maybe thought a bit like French Polynesia with lots of atolls that, you know, that have got hotels and resorts on, but there's only 2 inhabited islands up there?
Correct, yeah. So I believe that Darwin sailed past, and once he had a chance to visit Cocos Island, it helped formulate his theory on coral atolls, the formation of coral atolls. So as you're aware, it's an old volcano that really is just the ring of the top is what's sticking out of the sea that the coral reef's grown over. I think that there's 27 islands altogether in the atoll. The islands that you can access around the main lagoon area, none of that is national park. The only part is North Keeling. It's generally very tricky to get to. There's only a couple of months of the year where the weather is fine. There's no regular sponsored trips up there, so it's you know, it's not an offering that can generally be made. The home island is where the traditional Malay community live. They were brought in by the Clooney's Rosses to harvest the coconuts, the plantations and copra they were selling as an income for the island. And West Island is the other main settlement, which is where the runway is. And the accommodation is generally sprinkled around the runway. And I know people don't like the thought of staying too close to a runway, but they get 2 to 3 flights a week. They get the normal scheduled flights, and there might be some Air Force and things like that dropping in. So it's not like living next to, you know, Heathrow or anything like that. And their runway is actually quirkily part of their golf course. So there's a great
asking about golf.
Yeah.
Lisa,
so because
oh, sorry. No, go on.
Because they don't have a huge amount of eateries over there, quite a lot of the accommodation on Cocos is leaning towards the self-contained.
Okay.
So, Lisa, I was going to ask this. There's obviously a military history with Cocos as well. One of my work colleagues, father, I think, worked as a Morse code operator on radios in Cocos. So I presume the museum there has that military history as well that people can learn about.
Oh, yeah, there's some fantastic old photos there. One of the classics that I really like, they've got blown up in their museum, is it's a couple of soldiers with their safari suits on, standing on the shore, watching the Sydney and the Emden fire upon each other. It's a classic old photo. Yeah, so it was the first naval victory in Australian naval history, was the taking down of the Emden by the Sydney 1. Yeah, and their little museum over there's got quite a bit of history about the Clooney's Rosses, when was kind of their empire and how they structured living over there. And yeah, there's a
fantastic trail on Direction Island, a fantastic historical trail that makes its way around Direction Island. So and also they've got a new audio tour as well of Home Island. So yeah, a lot of history documented over there now.
Okay, we've just had a question in about the demographic of the island. So what age are your population, and what sort of culture? It's the Malay culture in the Cocos Keeling, is that correct?
Yeah, so I think there's probably just over 500 on Cocos Island. So I think the bulk of that is on Home Island, and that's all mixed generational living over there. So you've got little kids going to school to great grandparents living in the house with them. West Island is predominantly Caucasian, but there are Cocos Malay that live over there as well. And yeah, so same again, but a smaller proportion of the population of Cocos. On Christmas Island, we have Chinese, Malay, and a Caucasian. So the Caucasian is probably the smallest portion of the community here. It can be a transient community because of people on contracts and whatnot. The Malay community here, very multi-generational as well. And their numbers are growing because they're quite happy to stay in their family groups. So they're finding careers and employment pathways that allow them to stay on the island. The biggest part of the community historically has been the Chinese community. It is still to date, but we have a very good high school here, and the kids do extremely well, go off and get some brilliant degrees under their belts, but there's just not the work here for them on the island. So they're staying on the mainland. Mum and dad are getting a bit elderly. They don't have their immediate family around there to care for them. So they're selling up and leaving, and it's generally a young Malay family that is buying that house. So in the 23 years that I've been living here, I've watched this transition slowly happen during that time. So, but still very multicultural. You've got a mosque down at the beach, you've got a Chinese temple up the road, you're out in the jungle and you'll come across a little random temple in what looks like in the middle of nowhere, but that was where the energy of a god or goddess was felt that was really important to the Chinese community. So we get public holidays for Chinese New Year. We've got a public holiday here tomorrow for Hari Raya Haji. So yeah, so we're looking forward to that. So it's very multicultural and it is celebrated.
Sounds fantastic. So those residents of the island, are they considered to be Australian citizens, I guess? They're Aussies?
Yep.
Oh, fantastic. Richard, tell us a bit about the bird life and why it's such a unique place to bring people to birdwatch.
Well, in addition to the endemic birds that are here, and there's probably on both islands around 10 or so here in Cocos, there's also a large number of birds that are an attraction for birdwatchers in Australia, and this is the only two places in Australia they're found. So they're not endemic to here, but they're from Southeast Asia, and they're not on the mainland. So we have endemic birds, which is like the Christmas Island hawk owl, Christmas Island frigate bird, Abbott's booby. We have other birds that are found nowhere else in Australia but here. But the main attraction for my tours is in the wet season, in the migration season, is that both islands are situated underneath the Southeast Asian flyway. So for Australian birders, we get birds that migrate from Northern Asia, from Japan, Northern China, for example, and they come down across Borneo, Java, go a little bit further than they should, and they end up on Christmas or they end up on Cocos. Cocos is a little bit further west. It also receives birds from the Central Asian Indian flyway, and we also get birds from the Western Palearctic, from Europe and Africa. So as far as birding goes, as far as rare, vagrant, unusual birds go, it's the two islands are the best place in Australia to see unusual birds.
I think geographically, you're actually only a few hundred k's from Java, aren't you, for Christmas Island? Is that correct?
This is just under 400.
Yeah.
But Cocos is, if you draw a straight line between Perth and Sri Lanka, Cocos is about halfway. So Cocos is really out in the middle of nowhere.
A long way from anywhere. Yeah, fantastic. Now, weather-wise, obviously up in that region, it'd be very typical to the northern mainland with the wet season and the hot dry season? Is that fairly typical?
Yeah, so we don't get a winter here as such. We do get a wet season that runs from around November through to April. And then Cocos have their windy season from around June through to September, October. They have their windy season. But yeah, both of the islands have a sort of 27, 28 year round.
Perfect, because we had someone ask if the Australian winter was a good time to go up there. So I think that'd be the perfect time for you to visit, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It is the perfect time.
And by the windy season, I went to the Torres Strait Islands once, and it was in, I think, September, and it just blew every day. So is that sort of it's just breezy constantly?
It is for those few months of the year. They do attract a lot of kite surfers and windsurfers at that time of the year. But even if you go there for, just general holidaying or, it doesn't really impact on your holiday. I was just there a couple of weeks ago, windy season, and it was still amazing. We could still do all of the activities, go on the motorised canoes, fishing, all of that sort of stuff. So it's not a problem.
Can you explain a motorised canoe to me, please?
Okay, they are absolutely wonderful. So Cocos Islands Adventure Tours have a fleet of around 20 motorised canoes. They've got little 2.5 horsepower motors on the back. So yourself and your friend or a couple of friends, you head off across the lagoon with a leader from Cocos Island Adventure Tours. It's absolutely stunning. All of the canoes are really bright, gorgeous colours, and you're just heading across this lagoon. The water's sort of knee to waist deep at most points, but absolutely stunning. So it's great because you don't have to row and you can get to several islands in the atoll.
Okay, that sounds awesome. A great experience. So if we lead on to some additional experiences, that's a few other people have asked about what you do when you're there. So we've certainly got the birding and the kite surfing, if you're into that sort of thing, and the kayaking. What other activities are available across the islands?
Diving is spectacular across both islands. Christmas Island has a lot of really dramatic drop-offs because the island drops straight down into the Java Trench. And then we also get whale sharks starting from around November. Yeah, this last season was absolutely phenomenal. We were having 5, 6, 7 whale sharks a day.
Wow.
And the beauty of seeing the whale sharks here is that you're not travelling, 2 hours out to sea. You'll sort of jump on a boat, head 10 minutes up the coast, and that's where they are. So that's spectacular. There's a lot of beaches as well that are very remote. Most you have to walk into. But the beauty of most places that you visit on Christmas Island is that you'll get there and there's nobody else there. So you'll have the beach to yourself, the waterfall to yourself. It's, absolutely amazing. There's not many places in the world that you can say that you've had to yourself. So,
yep. Apart from accommodation beds, I guess, for people, is there any cap on visitors at any one time to the island like there is with Lord Howe Island?
Yeah, no. We've always mostly been able to expand to meet demand. The only time that Christmas Island gets particularly fully booked is around the red crab migration. Certainly when we know the specific spawning dates, those particular weeks in November and December can be very heavily booked. So it can be a challenge to get accommodation. This year may be different though, because we're not probably going to have our international guests that put a lot of heavy demand at that time of the year. So certainly for the Australian market, we anticipate that we should be able to meet demand. Cocos Island is normally, as Jana was saying earlier, that peak kite surfing, windsurfing, school holiday, get out of the cold in WA season. And they there's a week in the first week of October, school holidays in, they're already fully booked. I've had a few queries in the last few days, and I'm just saying, pick another week or look at Christmas Island, because there's just nothing left in terms of family accommodation on Cocos during that period. So Cocos get a lot of repeat clientele through that period, and those people will be very happy now that they know they're definitely having their holiday in October. Yeah.
That's good. Can you expand a bit more on the red crab migration? That's obviously something that's very iconic if it fills up the island. So
yeah, they if people aren't aware or haven't read up or seen one of the myriad of documentaries that are around about it, at the commencement of the wet season, the males a certain amount of humidity and moisture in the air. That sets them off to start the migration. The females follow them down about a week or so after that. The males dig a burrow and then wait for the females to come down. The mating happens. He goes and has a good wash in the sea, and we think they actually are topping up their electrolytes and salts that they need for living in the forest for the rest of the year. Then the males leave the female in the burrows and they migrate back up. So we get another, like that's the sort of third wave of the migration, is that return. And then once the females have gestated the eggs, which take about 13 days, they then migrate down to the sea. They're fairly close by then, so it's a short trip for them. And at a very particular tide, at a very particular time, inconveniently, usually somewhere between 3 and 4 a.m., they're dropping all those into the sea. So then, depending on the weather, the girls migrate back as well. So we need fairly consistent rain for all those sequences to happen. And generally, the spawning dates we know because of the tide they use. The rain really has to be fairly consistent, about 4 weeks before that, for all that sequence to happen. They're phenomenal. If we end up with a dry 10 days or something in the middle of that, they know they're not going to be ready to mate and spawn, and they all just dawdle, and it drags out till the next month when all the timing is right with the tides again. And they just know they know when they're not going to make it, and they dawdle and slow down a little bit, so the migration spreads out a little bit more because they've got more time now.
Okay, that sounds amazing. So even traffic stops, I guess, as I read somewhere, when the red crabs are migrating.
It does. And then about 3 weeks after the ladies spawn into the ocean, the babies come back to Christmas Island from set out to sea. And that's absolutely spectacular. That's a little bit harder to navigate with traffic, because with the adult crabs, we can rake them off the road. The baby crabs are absolutely tiny. You'd probably fit 2 or 3 on your small fingernails. So that obviously presents a little bit more of a challenge as far as roads go. So our rangers here, our shire and park rangers, actually have blower vacs to get the crabs across the road in our settled area so that cars can get through with minimum impact. So that's really spectacular, that phase of the migration.
Wow, that is simply so intriguing. It's fascinating.
It is. But we do tell our visitors that although the red crab migration is a real bucket list experience, we do have crabs here all year round. So there's approximately 50 million red crabs on Christmas Island. So it doesn't really matter what time of year you come, you will definitely see them. And also there's so many different crabs here. There's our blue crabs, which are also endemic to the island. And of course the robber crabs, which are coconut crabs elsewhere in the world, but we have a huge population of those as well. And can certainly see those all year round.
Fantastic. Now, what about marine life? You've mentioned the whale sharks come through. Is there turtles, other kinds of whales and different things that come through? Richard, do you want to touch on that one?
Yeah, we're a little bit far north of the main humpback migration that you get off the Australian east and west coast. So we don't really get, the only whales we get are the occasional ones that might drop in. You might see one humpback every couple of years. We had a couple of Blainville's beaked whales last year. There's permanent populations of spinner dolphins all around the island. And so what happens with the whale sharks is they turn up to coincide with the spawning of the red crabs. So if you go on a whale shark trip, you generally get to see spinner dolphins, and quite often you get to have a bit of a swim with them. They're usually quite friendly. You can jump in with them. There's also some pods of bottlenose around, but not very many. But certainly no shortage number of spinner dolphins.
And turtles? Is there turtles up in that area?
Yeah, we went down to Dolly Beach, which is the nicest beach on the island, last week, and we had 3 greens up on the beach laying eggs at night. And we also had 20 or so baby turtles on the beach that had just hatched.
Yep.
So that was quite nice. That's good.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
Sorry, I was just going to say on Cocos, they estimate there's around 30,000 turtles in the lagoon over there. So that's the spot for turtles.
Well, if you go snorkeling, you're likely to see a turtle.
Yes. Yes.
I was about to ask actually about snorkeling, because very often we talk about diving, but snorkeling's obviously a major thing. It's an increasing number of people who want to do that more and more. Yeah, any comments on snorkeling around Christmas in Cocos first?
The really good thing about both islands is, compared to just about everywhere else in Australia, including the Great Barrier Reef, is that you can snorkel on really nice coral reef straight from shore. You don't need a boat. You don't need to go out to another island. You can just park your car and swim 10 metres out and you're snorkeling over coral reef for free.
One of our ladies has just asked if there's any sharks.
Yeah, I'm guessing the sharks that you get around there will be the typical Indian Oceanic sharks around reefs. You'll get white-tip reef sharks, occasional black tips. That things are just minding their own business, going about their business.
Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic. Now,
I just sorry, I was just going to say further to Richard's point of saying that you can snorkel off the beach for free. And when you do get to the islands, you can do so many activities for free. So you can get into our national park. There's no fee associated with that. Both islands have museums that are free of charge. Any bushwalking, all those type of activities on both islands are free of charge, which is nice as well. Don't have your hand in your pocket the whole time.
I think that's fantastic, actually, particularly for families, because it can be quite expensive taking a family away on a holiday. And if you're constantly having to dip into your... That sounds amazing.
Something that's not always mentioned with the island is that, Jana was just saying, walking. I've probably been in all the really good rainforests in Australia, and Christmas Island is as good, if not better. The rainforest here is as good, if not better, than any rainforest in Australia. Cape York, Daintree, anything on the Great Dividing Range. The rainforest here is world class.
And is it as old as some of the other rainforests? I mean, I'm not great on that sort of knowledge.
Certainly not as old as the Daintree.
Yeah.
I'd say it's probably one of the younger rainforests in Australia.
Yeah. And I guess that brings with it it's all unique wildlife and species of different things as well.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of wildlife diversity in the rainforest. There's the birds and the crabs. And there are quite a few plants that are endemic.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But just the
about driving around Christmas Island. Is that people hire a car and drive around?
Well, actually, I was going to say, Lisa, we've got some great itineraries that you've given us to put up on Wild Diaries, and we've deliberately put those in as self-drive for this reason, presumably. Yeah, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, look, the roads are improving over time. So some of them are now sealed into the national park. Just please keep in mind that the roads do get locked when the crabs are migrating. The national park still has control of them. So you can get to a certain point with your vehicle and you'll have to leave that there and then endeavour to get to some of the other locations on foot. Generally, I feel if people are fairly confident travellers that they don't necessarily have to book on my tours, but one, if they're unsure about handling four-wheel drives, is I generally talk them into the Dolly beach tour with myself, because there is actually a couple of quite steep sections on that, and our little ravs do struggle, and sometimes that part of that track gets washed away after the wet season, during the wet season, so it can make it a challenge to get there. And so I generally sort of say to people, you know, if you do want to do a tour and you're happy sort of chasing the other locations, that's probably the one to book in with myself, just to take some of that risk factor out of that for them.
Okay, that's fantastic. We've got a couple of minutes left, and I'm a golfer, so I need to know a bit more about this golf course that also interchanges with airplanes landing. Instead of running 4, you'll outplane.
We've just had David from Extra Divers join us as well. So, yeah, he just wasn't able to join. Yeah, so the golfing.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. You tee off and then you all have your shot, and then together you cross the runway. But everyone always stops for that photo on the runway. Yeah, it's really beautiful. And we also have a stunning golf course here on Christmas Island as well. But our golf course is right on the edge of the cliff. So lots of balls end up in the ocean, and lots of kids dive for those balls to make some money. So, yeah, and both have very passionate clubs that are running the golf clubs as well. So the grounds are immaculate, and they've just got a beautiful energy around them too. So we do have events throughout the year. I guess our main one here on Christmas Island is the Acca Golf Open in May. Everyone's welcome, and it's any golfer, learners, pros, whoever, everyone's welcome, and it's a real social event. And we do have people come from all over Australia to participate in that event.
Crabs have right of way.
And crabs do have right of way on the golf course. That is correct. We believe it's the only course in the world with that rule.
Crabs rule. That's fantastic.
That's it.
I've got a question for David. David, someone's just asked about PADI on the island. I presume you provide training for people who want to learn to dive when they visit?
Yes, so there's PADI and SSI centres on the island. It doesn't really matter which organisation. So if someone wanted to do a diving course, we have a pool here, but we tend to head to the cove to do our initial training. And then a marine biologist said to me one day that it's one of the best shore dive locations she's ever witnessed in the just variety from the jetty. Even people who want to snorkel from the jetty, they say the same thing. It's incredible just snorkeling. But yes, it's possible to do a course here on the island for sure.
Brilliant, thank you.
Fantastic. And the water temperatures, do you need wetsuits year round, or can you dive and snorkel without?
It depends. The water ranges from 28 degrees. A lot of people are quite happy in shark skin vest and board shorts. I'm diving every day, and normally a 3 mil wetsuit for me. I don't particularly get cold. But probably our coldest time of year is this time of year at 25 degrees. So it's definitely nothing more than a 5 mil wetsuit. And that's if you get cold. I'm still diving in a 3 mil wetsuit at the moment.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, I'm glad you dropped in to say hi at the end there. We greatly appreciate it. So, thanks, everyone. It's been wonderful. It's certainly, through this whole process of talking to various regions, I'm learning so much about my own country, and certainly a region I've never visited, and it's certainly a region that's on my bucket list now for sure. So it sounds absolutely fantastic. So thanks so much for your time. Stay safe and well up there. And I hope the WA population travel and keep you all very busy. And then once our borders are open and we can all start moving, we'll do our best to send the rest of the country to visit. So thank you, everybody. Much appreciated.
Thanks for the opportunity, Diaries. Thank you.
That's right. And thanks to everyone who stopped in to listen as well.